Hello, lovely ladies in the Goddess Creations for Women group and beyond. As we are filming, it is New Year's Eve, so you may hear some bangs in the background and maybe not. And it doesn't matter because you could also be watching this much later. So I welcome you wherever you are, whenever you are in the now. If you're watching live, just do a hashtag live so that I know that you're watching. And if you're watching in the replay, do feel free to do hashtag replay so that I can connect with you as well. Well, we are now, as I said, in New Year's Eve, and it's not going to be the theme of the subject at all, but it is a moment of contemplation. And what do you want to take with you into the new year, and what do you want to leave behind? Well, I have with me the lovely Sarah Sparks. Sarah Sparks, in other words, aka Sparky, is an international best-selling author and award-winning public speaker, and she is very passionate about helping reduce the levels of stress and burnout in the workplace. Now, let's think about that. How many of us have not quite been happy in our workplace? Well, Sarah is very passionate about for us to thrive at work. So that is what she's going to be talking about. What is our confidence? Where is our confidence in having this stress being reduced? So, and what she will be sharing about is how we can look after our mental well-being, reduce stress, and thus be more productive, happy, and get the results we want. So more success without stress. And this is a bit of a tongue twister for me. More success without stress. So that is what Sarah's going to be talking about, which is absolutely wonderful. And so let me then bring on Sarah Sparks. So how to choose to thrive instead of the stress. I'm going to bring on Sarah right now. Hello, Sarah. Thank you for
Hello.
watching.
Hello,
Hello.
hello. Hello, everybody who's watching as well.
I had quite a bit of a tongue twister with all the S's there. So,
Sorry about that, Shamna.
so yes, stress and how to reduce that and actually thrive at work. Tell us about it. What brings you to this subject?
Oh, what brings me to the subject of getting it wrong so many times. So I had a very I loved, but I burnt out dramatically, and it has taken over 5 years to get well enough to work again, which just shows you how burnt out I was. But 15 years really to get fully well. So I know firsthand about how not to do it. And since 1999, I've been working with people to help them realize, the impact of their working strategies and whether they're sustainable. Because if they're not sustainable, you're likely to burn out yourself at some point. So that's what I do these days. But it was the hard way that I learned.
And you're saying that 15 years ago, that was when you had your burnout and too much stress in your life? Is that?
Well, I would say that we all probably have too much stress in our lives, wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
But the thing is that the stress doesn't go away. It's how we deal with it that makes the difference. And what I've noticed through all of these years is that people haven't really changed the way they work. But in fact, the world has changed significantly. It's got faster and faster, and we're working harder and harder, and we're on 24/7 that we weren't on all of those years ago. And yet we still expect to be able to perform in the same way. And it just doesn't work. Our brains are not designed that way, and our bodies are not designed that way. So yes, we all got stressed, and me included. So I don't know about you. I've really needed to recover this Christmas and New Year period because I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I put a lot into 2019. I'm pleased that I did, but unless I get this time to rest, then I know I can't set myself up for 2020.
Yes. So, how would you then advise this for all of us watching in the sense of how would we balance out actually the input from outside or the stress, or how can we determine, where our boundaries are in this? How would we go about this? Because we all do have stress and yet we
Mm.
do become stressed. So, how do we at
But,
least recognize stress? Let's talk about that first.
well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because often when you're in the thick of it, you can often say, "I'm just going to keep going, just keep pushing through," and we often do push through. But if you keep pushing through and keep pushing through, then that's what is chronic stress. There's a difference between acute stress and chronic stress. Stress is not bad for us. It's just the fact that if we have acute stress after another stress after stress after stress after stress without the recovery piece, that's the chronic stress that causes all the dis-ease, whether it's heart disease or back problems or stress and anxiety generally. These are all caused by chronic stress symptoms where we're not getting the recovery in between bouts of stress. So I think first and foremost, recognizing that, if you were a weightlifter in the gym, for example, you know that if you go to the gym and you stretch your muscles and work them really hard, if you do it too much, they don't work anymore. Would you agree that that's what happens? And the same with us. If we work too hard, it just doesn't work anymore. And so the bodybuilder knows that it's so important to rest in between exertion in order to have maximum performance. That's when the muscles actually grow. So the same concept is true for us too.
Well, actually, many of us aren't aware about that. I mean, yes, the bodybuilder may have a coach or something like that that will, coach him in when to pause and what the pattern is. But as you said at the beginning, is that we live in a society that asks of us to keep going and going and going, always be at your best, always be producing, always be ready. So how would we, without that coach, know when it is time to stop? I mean, yeah, sure, it's now winter, but how do we recognize when it's time to slow down and listen?
Very good question. Often you don't know. So having this philosophy, this mindset, actually, if you want to be your best, you have to rest, is one of the key things that you need to do. So bodybuilders do it before they injure themselves. They stop and they rest and recover. We need to do something similar, which is why I advocate people taking a moment to breathe during their day. And the whole point of this breathing is to bring down the stress hormones, because if you don't bring down these stress hormones as often as you possibly can, that's when the chronic stress starts to kick in. Now, you can tell from how our bodies are responding whether you are bringing down the stress hormones or not. And that's what I use biofeedback technology with my clients to do that. But it requires wearing a sophisticated device, which obviously we can't do all day, every day. But there are ways of actually understanding what's going on the inside, because from the outside, it's very, very difficult to tell. I didn't tell. I thought I was superhuman, superwoman, and I thought I could just keep going. So it does. There is technology out there. I believe in the years to come, it will be a wearable technology. I'm wearing a particular ring here that tells me the quality of my sleep, not just how long I'm sleeping, but the different cycles of my sleep.
Wow.
And I believe this other biofeedback technology, which can tell us when we're in the stress response or in the recovery response, will become a day-to-day wearable. But right now, it's not. So I use that technology with clients if they really want to know what's going on.
And do we then have to rely on technology to be able to measure our stress? How can we do this in daily life without having the lovely expert that you are to measure us for that?
Well, I think that's where rituals and habits really, really help. So setting yourself up for the day to have a day that is likely to go well makes a difference. So some sort of morning routine helps. Having this concept of actually getting that stress rest rhythm going, so that you do take regular breaks, and really being super aware. If you start thinking, actually, I can't think straight, or information isn't going in, that's a sign. That's feedback for you that actually your body's saying, okay, my brain in particular in that case is saying, okay, it's full up. It needs to effectively reboot. It'll put some information into the long-term memory. It will dump what it doesn't need, and it keeps what it does need for the task ahead in the prefrontal cortex. But if you don't give it some time to rest to do that, so even going for what I call a FAB break, a fluid adjustment break, FAB break, which is either grabbing a glass of water, a cup of coffee, cup of tea, going to the loo. That's an opportunity for our brains to be very busy in the background, but essentially giving it a rest on what it's the task in hand. So all the time we're getting feedback. It's not very loud. So you have to really pay attention to what's going on.
I like that fluid adjustment break, FAB break. So actually, you said two things. You said have that drink, but also go to the toilet. Yeah. I have my cup right here. So
Mm.
cheers. Let's do that right now.
Chin chin.
Hmm.
And it is so important, that fluid adjustment, going to the loo. Again, it gives you feedback. I'm afraid, to be very basic, if your wee is strong in color and smelly, that means you're dehydrated. And when you're dehydrated, you can't concentrate. And
Well, I didn't know that.
yes, even the mildest form of dehydration affects concentration. And the dehydration loop, the feedback loop, is very slow. So going to the loo is way too late to find out that you're dehydrated. So we need to make sure we're hydrated continuously to be at our best again.
So actually, if we are talking about, because your subject is, let's say, the workspace, right? So at work, I find, although is that true? Sometimes you know how that for me, when I used to be in employment, I would have a jar of water and I could pour that water continuously while I'm working. And at home, I would forget, or vice versa, because it depends on the pattern that you have created.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was in like full concentration mode at work, I would just keep going on and on and on and on and on. So, and then you have the employer, let's say, who wants you to go on and on and on and on, or the deadlines, or has to be finished then. So, how do you, in that situation, take care and bring down your stress level? Because yeah, you got a lot to do, haven't you? So, what would you give us as a tip concerning that?
Well, again, education. If you can educate the people around you about high performance, then that would be the first point of call. However, some of them are not ready to listen, and others, there's all sorts of reasons. However, so if you find yourself in a place where you've just got to keep going, then you need to do it anyway. So that is, sitting there and taking some breaths, or rolling your shoulders and relaxing in that way, or making an excuse in the middle of a meeting to say, actually, I need the bathroom, even if you don't.
Ooh.
Because actually, if you notice that you're not functioning at your best, and maybe you need some time to think, and it's an important meeting where decisions need to be made, and you're integral to that, then buy yourself some time. Make an excuse.
Just so that you can center again, let's say.
Yeah, or even stand up and walk around the room, or stand up and hold the back of your physical state. All of these things are really helpful in terms of getting yourself back into that most productive place. Now, it sounded it like anyway, that you were talking about a time when you were in flow. You were just deep into something. And of course, we want to be in that state of flow from time to time, don't we, to get really quality work done. The quality of everything we do depends on the thinking we do first. So that's a beautiful Nancy Klein quote, by the way. So to get into those moments of flow makes a big difference to your productivity and effectiveness. But they're quite difficult to come by in today's world. Would you not agree? With so many distractions out there and so many demands. So again, you need to be able to educate yourself and others to say, actually, I've got quality work to do today, whether it's a half an hour or a 2-hour project, whatever it is. Help me not be distracted. So turning off all your notifications, finding yourself a little bubble of quiet somewhere, giving people a sign. I have one of my clients who has a pink pig that sits on her desk every time she doesn't want people to interrupt her. She's in an open plan office, and the pink pig is a sign saying, okay, I'm really got to get this shit done, excuse the French. She has her head down, and woe betide anybody who interrupts her when the pink pig comes out.
Isn't that, but the people see that as a bit neurotic, oh dear, there's the pink pig, or the red flag, or...
It's all about delivery, isn't it? So if you had a conversation with somebody saying, actually, this is an important piece of work and it's going to benefit either the organization or you or something, then, and people like to help. If they know what you're trying to do, they try and help you out. So there are all sorts of ways of setting yourself up for success there.
Do you also know, or do you also find, or have you experienced with your clients that women find it also difficult to say no, because that's also a source of stress? Being able to say no or set their boundaries can be quite stressful. And as I said, at the workplace, the employer having all of these demands on you. I mean, that is also, not everyone is as empowered as we would like. And so that builds up to the stress, that builds to the burnout, that builds to the sick leave. And you and I have both been through this journey,
Mm-hmm.
but and have come out on the other end with our own decision making. But there are many that are still in that situation. How can we save those from that burnout, or do we have to wait until they've actually burnt out?
Good question. I would challenge one of the things that you've talked about there about people aren't very good at saying no. Everybody's really good at saying no. They're very, very good. Sometimes they just don't know what they're saying no to. So when they're saying yes to their boss, they may be saying no to seeing their kids go to bed, or reading them a story, or spending time with a loved one, or eating a meal that they're desperately in need of. So they are very good at saying no. The thing is that they just aren't always conscious of what they're
I
saying no to.
think that's brilliant. I love that.
So the first thing again is to start noticing, what am I saying no to when I'm saying yes to this? What is the consequences of me staying late again in the office, or completing that project, or using my weekend up to get something done? And it's okay to do those things, but don't do it unconsciously. Bring it to your conscious awareness that actually this is a choice I'm making, and it may not feel like a choice, but actually when you start to realize that if you are making a choice at some level about what you're saying yes and no to, that kind of helps. But often, again, people aren't ready to hear it. And not that I'd wish burnout on anybody, but sometimes that has, I witness that has to be where they go to before they'll start to take notice. And the consequences are really high. I mean, I don't know about your story, Shamna, but for me, I burnt out in such a way that my body didn't function. I couldn't cross the road. The only thing I could do was a jigsaw puzzle. I couldn't read a newspaper. I was just, my brain had completely and utterly fried. I tried for years and years and years to have children, and I couldn't. I had 6 rounds of IVF, all of which failed. My marriage finally broke down. There were huge consequences of me not paying attention. And I don't wish for that on anyone.
Yeah. And actually, what you said has now triggered me feeling very emotional, because exactly what you've just mentioned, Sarah, is what is recognizable to so many women. I have a friend that had tried to become pregnant and doing the IVF, and it's also the I have to, and that energy of I have to destroys the relationship in the end, and destroys your relationship with yourself, with your sexuality, with the people around you, and all of that. And it's not like there's nothing wrong with I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the IVF, but that whole internal journey it's almost like you come into a tunnel vision, and you forget or don't see the rest anymore. So that is your reality, and that creates stress within itself, and because that is your have to.
Absolutely. And it's just like tunnel vision, and that's the only thing that seems to matter. And you do get disconnected with the world, with the loved ones, with yourself, all of those things, and it's a very long way back. And you were asking me for some tips earlier. One of the things that I do now when I notice myself becoming, I'm not going to say obsessed, but in a place of resistance where it just doesn't feel I'm at one with myself. So I like to try and get out of that state as quickly as I can. And it's
like
not
overdriven. Overdriven?
Yeah, it could be overdriven, or it could be, yesterday I got caught up in a little argument at a cinema, which it was all about people making noises with their wrappers, you know the thing. And anyway, that little argument didn't want to go away. It was kind of niggling at me. So the way that I managed to get myself out of that state, for me, I need to have a trigger. And the trigger that I use is a perfectly formed rose I have in my mind's eye. It's a pink rose. It's got a little beautiful drop of dew on it. And it is just so perfectly formed. When I think of that, everything for me then starts going,
yeah.
And I feel very connected with nature and my soul. So for me, that's one of my ways of getting out of that frustration place, that tense, that place, into a place of, okay, what's important here?
Yeah.
So
Actually, that rose is very powerful. I immediately felt things soften up, just soften and soften. I mean, pink rose. I mean, it's not like. I mean, not everyone likes pink, but when you imagine a pink rose, there's no way you can feel harsh. It's just not possible.
It's one of those, and just all of those different petals, just so beautifully formed. I just think it's just a gorgeous image in my mind. So that's the sort of thing that I do to get myself into a better state when I'm feeling myself.
So when do you also speak to companies concerning stress at the workplace? Is that one of your tools, or is that something you do?
I do a lot of that. In fact, I was working and I did 17 gigs this year, and over 2,000 people I spoke to about looking after their mental well-being at work. And the fact of the matter really is, the world has changed, and yet the way we're working hasn't changed. And often when people are unwell, there's certainly in financial services, which is the organizations I tend to work in these days, there's more awareness around mental health. There's certainly more awareness about mental health first aid, and there's more support for people when they fall over. But there's very little about prevention. And one of the things, I was talking at the House of Lords earlier this month, and I was talking there for a very specific reason. This is to health and safety executives, alongside Stephen Farmer, the CEO of Mind, and Dennis Stevenson, who was commissioned by Theresa May to do a Thriving at Work report. And one of the things that we're noticing more often these days is that people who are had a mental illness or have been mentally unwell, they get put back into the same environment that perhaps made them ill in the first place. And we wouldn't do that with a physical illness. If you were at a dangerous motorway junction, you're a motorway road worker, they would not put you back into a dangerous junction. They would make sure there's lots of safety barriers so that you could be kept safe. Well, we're not yet doing that for mental health. So I'm being asked time and time again to go into organizations and, again, first and foremost, bring it to their awareness that this
And
is
mental
going on.
health, you are talking about the burnout effect, or are we talking about someone who is disabled? What is mental health in this setup?
So this is mental ill health that's brought about by stress and anxiety in the workplace, potentially, or burnout, or it can also include things like bipolar disorder and other mental health illnesses, but that's not my area of expertise. But so I'm particularly focusing on, okay, we are creating more ill health from a mental health point of view. What are we doing that's causing that in the first place? And I think this always distracted, the lack of recovery we're allowing people or encouraging people to have. We haven't even spoken about sleep.
Lack of recovery. I remember for myself, when I burnt out, the system is that within 2 weeks you get a phone call and they're asking when you're coming back. But they haven't then taken on the cause. Now, for me, it was a bit different because I also had the multiple sclerosis. That was my reason for letting go. But there are many people that when they do fall sick, within 2 weeks, they have to get back in without let's just say, the extra support of why are you sick?
Absolutely.
And no one is looking at the why. It's more like get back to work. And it would be, you're doing this in England in your own way, and it would be wonderful if we could prevent this falling out, which is costing the system and the government and the employers much more money when you are sick than if they would do a preventive.
Absolutely.
Take care of people.
In fact, I've been asked to speak at a big conference in March at the Excel Centre, and they'd like me to talk about rehab or prehab.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's that very topic. What are we doing to prevent people from burning out and having too much stress, chronic stress in particular?
Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I know. That's big. I've been to the Excel Centre, and that's a large stage to be able to stand on. So congratulations for you.
Thank you.
So
Thank
I
you.
would like to know, lovely Sarah or Sparky, what tips would you give us who are watching as something to put in our pocket to do in the now to aside from the block breathing? In fact, maybe you could express that block breathing with us, just to go
Yes.
with that. Yes, and if you have other tips, because the viewers would love to have something in their pocket to either break the pattern, calm down, or
Mhm.
recognize, all of these, I mean, work situation, personal, daily, whatever it may be, just
Mhm. Yeah, well, I'm happy to talk about the box breathing. And maybe I'll come in, I'll bring that in. But we haven't spoken about sleep, and I
oh
cannot,
yes,
I cannot finish.
then bring it
We have,
on, bring it on.
so my first recommendation with all of my clients, and if everyone I speak to, is around looking out for their sleep. Most people are not getting enough sleep. And unless you're getting 7+ hours, between 7 and 9 for a typical adult, then the chances are you're not getting enough sleep. And the thing about sleep is you get sleep debt. So it accumulates if you're not getting enough sleep. So you don't start from zero every day. So if you haven't had enough sleep for the last few days, you need to catch up at some point. There's all sorts of research out there that proves the point, but there is so much I could talk about sleep forever. But not only is it affect performance, but it is a significant impact on the likelihood of suffering from Alzheimer's, heart disease, diabetes, weight gain, you name it. There are
Chronic illnesses.
all sorts of chronic illnesses associated with sleep. So if I was going to suggest, the first and foremost tip is to make sure you're getting between 7 and 9 hours of sleep every night.
Well
And
then,
that's quality sleep, not just sleep. And most people say, well, I'm not sure how I can do that because I can't get up any later. And that's probably true. You can't get up any later. You might have a commitment at work or commitment with kids. So you need to be able to backtrack. You need to get to bed earlier. So often I ask my clients to set an alarm for going to sleep, not just the one for getting up, because they need a reminder of getting into their sleep routine. And I highly recommend a sleep routine that allows you to step away from the gadgets.
and the television.
The television, you're getting into a more calm state, ideally having a bath, having blackout blinds, making sure
Lovely.
your body's cooling down, keeping the body cold or cooler at nighttime. All are fantastic things for increasing the quality of your
Really,
sleep.
a cooler body helps you sleep better because me, I don't sleep if I'm cold. So
Well, there's a difference between cold and cooler.
oh yes,
So I don't sleep if I have cold feet. I
yeah,
know
exactly.
I need my bed socks on if
Me
I've
too.
got cold feet.
Confession time, confession time.
Yes, but one of the reasons why warm baths really makes a difference is that cooling of the body that helps the melatonin production and the falling to sleep aspect of it. So they do recommend that you don't have radiators on at nighttime. That you actually it's a cool room, not a cold room, but a cool room. I have very little covers, but my partner needs quite a lot of covers to keep himself warm enough, but still the room is actually cool nonetheless. So sleep would be the first thing, and then it's about making sure that you rest, recover. Have that sort of in your mind all of the time. If I'm going to do any sort of exertion, whether it's a physical exertion or a mind worry exertion or a work exertion, that you build in recovery time. So I would recommend every 90 minutes you do something, whether it's just standing up and walking around the room or, as I say, having those fab breaks. But every 90 minutes, if you're one of those people who gets stuck into things and time just flies, then having a reminder can often help. The Pomodoro technique would be a great one if somebody wants to Google that, the Pomodoro technique. But and so that's where the breathing can come in. That can help you if you can't physically get away from your desk. There's nothing that's going to stop you actually continuing to breathe. Would you agree? You can continue to breathe.
Yes.
No one would even know. So if you're finding yourself in a place where you are already feeling a bit anxious, or you've just started to notice that your brain's not functioning at its best, then that's a perfect time for doing some box breathing. And the box breathing, I think, was originally named that by Army Marines in the US. I think they were the first to call it this. And it's literally called a box because it's got 4 equal sides. And the idea is that you breathe in for 4, a count of 4, you hold it for 4, you breathe out for 4, and then you pause for 4. And if you just do 3 rounds of that, that can take as little as 30 seconds, just 3 rounds of box breathing, you'll be amazed at the difference that you feel in terms of bringing down your stress hormones and feeling more calm. And when you feel more calm, you have much more intellectual capacity, you are much better able to have emotional intelligence and connect with other people, much better ability to impact and influence others. So many benefits that if you can just bring down those stress hormones. So that would be the tip, I would say. Absolutely. Have that one in your back pocket. No one needs to know.
I must say, I remember from when I was a financial manager that because I was quite a bit of a workaholic. And also entering that flow and that tunnel vision and especially around salary time, I would also get up and have that break every 1.5 hours just to walk around and say hi to other colleagues, for which I got told off. But that's because the employer didn't have that mentality of, hey, what are you doing? But for me, that was my way of actually raising my energy again, because resetting my energy, having that fun, bubbly thing, and then going back into that bubble of work.
Yeah, and that's it. So you're actually giving your whole physiology and your brain the opportunity to do whatever it needs to do so that you can get back to doing that focus concentration. Exactly. And if you're able to step out in nature or step out into the fresh air, not just walking around, that's even better still. You're getting some natural light on
daylight.
Yeah, seeing a tree all helps.
I love it. So Sarah, thank you. I would like to know, where can we find you? Just share that with us so that we know where to get information on you.
Yes, so the best thing I would suggest is connecting with me on LinkedIn. And you'll find me under Sarah Sparks, Choose to Thrive. But you can also find me on my website, which is sarahsparks.co.uk. So it's just as my name is spelled, .co.uk. So those are the 2 best places. I also run a group called the Thrive Tribe on Facebook, so that you can also find me there.
That's wonderful, and I thank you. And is there anything else that you would love to share on the top of this, or maybe even ask me? It could also be something that you'd like to just add as an extra that I may have overlooked.
It's such a big topic, Shamna, so I'd love another opportunity to speak probably. But, we're talking about helping organizations become aware and then starting to change the way that they work, recognizing this. It's not idleness and laziness or losing productivity for allowing people to. So opportunities to share that message is really what I want to be doing next year. I am coming to speak in Holland. I'll be speaking in Amsterdam, so I'll let you know.
Wonderful.
But if there are opportunities for the audience to work together to help shift organizations' mindsets, then that would be the thing that we all need to do, I think. 2020 and this next decade is going to be so key, which reminds me, I don't know whether you saw that there was a court case that came through from France, a technology company, a mobile technology company, where the senior leaders have been put into jail because of the way that they treated their employees and mental ill health. So I believe that the tide is beginning to change and shift now, where people will absolutely pay attention and start doing things differently.
Well, I must say, for my own stress level, I don't watch television. Well, I think I've started it slowly again, softly, but there's no way I'm watching any news or anything like that, because that just makes me, that raises my stress. So I know that I don't do that to honor my own energy level or sensitivity or whatever you want to call it. So, but thank you very much, Sarah. This was wonderful. We can easily have this conversation again, and I thank you for your time on this New Year's Eve.
Yes.
And so let's go and have our rest and to get ready for the new year.
I'm going to have a rest before I go out this evening, that's for sure.
Yes, I think I'm going to do exactly the same. So lovely ladies who are watching live, thank you very much. And lovely ladies who are watching in the replay, thank you very much. in the Goddess Creations for Women, in the Goddess Creations for Women group, and outside and anywhere. I thank you, and I wish you a lovely, if you're watching it very soon, 2020, or wherever you may be, whenever you may be. And thank you very much, Sarah, again
My
for
pleasure.
having this wonderful time with me to share about stress and how to choose to thrive. So thank you very much for that.
Okay, bye
Okay,
for now.
we'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye.